this is gonna be really different from what I generally do. I mean, it is kind of like the same thing, but either way, we're gonna actually see the premium branding, or how do these brands position themselves in the market itself. I have a brand, and I want to learn, and I want to share with you while learning. So I was like, okay, you know what? This will be a great idea for that. So let's do it.
Why do some brands just feel so premium? You see, we all had the
Why?
same feeling. We go into
Tell
the
me.
store, we see a product, and we instantly think that must be expensive. Premium brands like Nike or
True.
Ralph Lauren or Lululemon or
Nike's
others
not
have
expensive.
mastered more than good design. They've
Okay.
actually mastered how to advertise in a way that makes you want to pay 10 times the price for a certain product. So how do these premium brands make you want to pay 10 times the price? You see, these brands have spent billions trying to crack the human brain and understand customer psychology. The same timeless principles that these brands use, I've been using them to scale over 50 plus e-commerce stores in the past
Okay.
couple years, running campaigns
Let's
that
see.
have generated millions of dollars for all the brands that we work with. And in this video, I'll break down the core principles for
I'm on
premium
this.
advertising. We'll go through timeless
We'll break
campaigns,
it down.
today's social media landscape, and how you can use the same psychology to position your brand as a premium business, command higher prices, and create a category of one. You see, when you take a look at the world's most prestigious premium brands, you find out that they're kind of scattered in terms of industry. You've got German car companies, you've got fine Italian clothing brands, you've got premium coffee brands. They all look different on the surface, yet we all agree that they are all premium. The common denominator that all of these businesses have is that they can command higher prices. And that's because when you strip away the logos and the trends, what you find is timeless principles that are used and reused to cultivate that premium.
There's
There's
spitting.
three main principles that all premium brands share. One of them, the most important one, is exclusivity. You see, there's something inherently magical about exclusive items.
I agree.
It's a feeling of owning something that not everyone can own. And you see, exclusivity is not scarcity. It's more about creating a narrative. It's more about creating a story around the product that elevates that product beyond its functional value. And what happens is the product itself becomes secondary. The ownership, the status, the story, the luxury of it, everything that isn't the product is the most important factor that makes it more desirable. Some of the most recognized brands of all time have been applying this principle for decades. To get a grasp of one of the best examples, we need to go back to 1920.
Because think of it this way, all of these brands have so much money that they can easily make like a lot of these products. But they are like, oh, there's 1 year wait list. What do you mean wait list? You have billions of dollars.
And look at Packard Motor Company.
What the hell is that?
At the height of the 20th century,
PMC.
the automobile market was dominated by mass market manufacturers like Chevrolet and Ford. What happened is cars became more and more affordable, leaving little space to competitors. And so brands like Packard Motor Company were threatened to become irrelevant. And so this company, led by Henry Joy, took a very bold, counterintuitive approach. They launched a campaign for discriminating clientele. And the goal was to speak to a very niche sub-segment of the market.
What does that mean?
That was valuing craftsmanship, the story behind the car, how it was made, the features, the benefits, all of the luxury that was in it. By using a very specific messaging pattern, what happened is Packard was appealing to the elites, and these elites represented a very unique space in a crowded market. The campaign obviously was a major success, and Packard is now remembered as one of the first companies to position a business or a brand not just as the product that it sells, but as the story and the prestige that it embodies. So exclusivity isn't about making your product
That is
scarce
interesting
or
story
possible
idea.
that it's out of stock. It actually comes from noticing that your product is actually better than the competition, but from an angle that hasn't been used before, that is kind of unique. A great example comes from Mad Men, where Don Draper is working on a campaign that's the Lucky Strike campaign. Despite increasing the skepticism and the backlash from the public about tobacco and its health issues, they repositioned the product as premium by emphasizing a unique quality.
Everybody else's tobacco is poisonous. Lucky Strike. It's toasted.
And this subtle reframing
It's
essentially
toasted.
allowed customers and the crowd to identify this product as a premium luxury product rather than just another cigarette. But exclusivity is not alone. Remember, we have 3 principles. If you only speak to how exclusive your product is, you're not going to get the impact that you're trying to go for. The product must also speak to who the customer is, their aspirations,
course.
their goals, their vision, their values, their principles. Everything about them needs to be identified and condensed into the product. So the second principle is identification. Exclusivity, it gets...
Okay, makes sense, because you can't just make it exclusive. There's nothing to be exclusive of, you know?
the attention, but what keeps the attention locked in is identity. You see, premium brands don't just sell a product, they sell a reflection of who the customer thinks they are. And they double down on that story to emphasize the identity that the product creates in the customer. You see, premium brands understand that when a customer buys an expensive product, they're not just buying an expensive product, they are consciously and willingly signaling something about themselves. So in other words, think about the product becoming the mirror of who the customer is. So by the 1950s, Chanel Numéro 5 was a product that was a premium product. However, new products started coming and flooding the shelves. There was also a shift in customer behavior because women were becoming increasingly independent and looking for products that reflected that confidence and sophistication. And so Chanel faced a problem that many premium brands face is how do you maintain desirability without diluting exclusivity and reach out to a broader audience? What they did was actually genius because instead of thinking about any product features or highlighting the ingredients or highlighting this about the product or this specific thing, they thought about how to position their product to appeal to the identity of who they were selling it to. And they launched one of their most famous campaigns. Every woman alive adores Chanel Numéro 5. And this was extremely bold at the time, but it was genius. Every single level of society at the time aspired to be someone that could afford this product. And so it created this insane demand for this specific product. Because their campaign positioned the fragrance as a symbol of elegance, femininity, and sophistication. And so appealing to your customers means that you are reflecting the traits that customers aspire to see in themselves. You're painting a picture of who they want to become as a person, and you're positioning your product as the vehicle or the bridge between their situation and where they want to go. Knowing who your customer is and reflecting that back.
This is really good, actually.
To make them feel as though they need to belong to your club is an amazing, amazing strategy that you can use within your products as well. However, if you want to take it to the next level, we're going to talk about the third principle, which is essentially how to tell a good story. Because exclusivity gets the attention.
This is literally what I speak in my e-commerce classes. If you guys don't know, I teach design and I teach e-commerce as well. So this is literally what I talk about.
Desire a product. Identity makes them tie their sense of who they are into that specific product. But storytelling is what makes your brand unforgettable. And so the three tied together, it creates the perfect storm to unleash unfathomable scale for your company. You see, storytelling isn't about creative logos or creative visuals or whatever. It's about connecting your product. It's about creating a story. It's about creating a narrative around your product that connects the product itself with your customer and who they aspire to be. It's about creating a story that connects the product with the brand, with the consumer's life. And so what normally is a rather casual act of just purchasing a product becomes an experience that is embedded with emotion, meaning, and memory. And you see, timeless premium brands have understood this and have been applying this for decades now. They understand that across industries and eras, the most effective marketing campaigns, the most effective portrayal of a product is really when you invite the customer to be a part of the story you're creating. And you base that story based on who they are as a person and who they aspire to be, creating an experience and inviting them to be in an exclusive club. So by the mid-2000s, Nespresso was facing a similar challenge. Nespresso faced a classic challenge for any premium brand. Coffee was everywhere. Espresso machines were becoming common. The product itself was functional.
I mean, it's really easy to say than to do. I'll just say it there. Because a lot of people know it, but like it's really hard to execute. But again, it's hard to execute. That's why it is more rewarding.
How do you differentiate yourself? How do you make it feel like it's a more sophisticated and more luxury and more premium product? Well, Nespresso understood that they needed more than the tasty pod or an effective machine or a good machine. They understood that they were not in the market of selling coffee. They needed to shift to selling a story that everyone wanted to be a part of. The solution, George Clooney. Who else do you need? And so what they did is they cast George Clooney as the face of the brand. someone who was sophisticated, witty, good-looking, a discerning coffee lover, someone that embodied the lifestyle that Nespresso wanted to communicate. And so Clooney wasn't just like your regular celebrity actor or just someone with a pretty face. He was literally the embodiment of the story Nespresso wanted to create. He was a symbol of the aspirations of the typical consumer of coffee. And so that's why every single commercial was extremely attractive. It was a story. It wasn't just an ad. You were looking at a story, an embodiment of what you wanted out of your life. And you were
interesting.
watching it live on TV. And the slogan, what else, wasn't just another slogan. It was simple, it was memorable, and it reinforced the idea that Nespresso wasn't just a choice. It was a conscious decision for those who appreciate refinement.
If not this, then what else?
Look, these three fundamental principles have not changed. They're still there, and they're still being used and used and used and used. And so what used to work on billboards and print ads and TV commercials is now being applied on social media. And today's brands still rely on these three principles to position themselves as the only solution for the sophisticated buyer. But the way they deliver those ideas has evolved. The first example, Lululemon. Lululemon doesn't do limited editions as much as it does limited experience. The Sweat Life campaign invited only brand ambassadors, loyal customers, and people that belong to the Lululemon family to really show their lifestyle, effectively saying this is a club you join, not a discount that you get. When it comes to identity, owning Lululemon says a lot about you as a person. It tells people that you're a high performer or an aspiring high performer and that you are mindful. And so the videos that you see, these aren't models or people that are faking it just for the sake of the ad. They're yoga teachers, runners, community leaders. These people embody who the customer aspires to be. And it makes the customer see themselves as part of that tribe. A tribe that is fit, healthy,
balanced.
They're
Makes sense.
not your typical static ads or your typical buy this, get one free, whatever. They're really about showing the lifestyle. They're mini documentaries, usually 15 to 30 seconds, and they show people in their routines. They show someone in their morning run, they show someone meditating, someone training, and it really puts the perspective of the customer, because now they see the product as being part of a certain lifestyle rather than just the product for what it is, which is a garment. Represent Clothing is another example that is very valuable to analyze. Represent built its business by drops. So they don't stock forever. They drop, once it's gone, it's gone. And so that's a great tactic for built-in exclusivity. When it comes to identity, it is a clear bias that they took when it comes to portraying who the brand is for and who it isn't for. You can see the visuals, the founder's story, the YouTube channel, the documentaries, all the content that they put out is for a specific segment of the market, and they set out to dominate that segment of the market. And so they are hyper-focused and hyper-aware of who they want to convert into a buyer. Their social ads are just stories being told. You see the founders really involved in just showing the lifestyle and really embodying that lifestyle and being the beacon that shows customers what the brand is for. And so it creates that narrative that customers just love and want to be a part of. And that's really, really powerful storytelling. So seeing all of these brands like Lululemon and Represent, how they
I like Represent a lot. They did a really good job.
Into their ads, it makes one thing very, very clear. Premium ads are not about the visual. They're about creating a world where your customers want to step into. So the real question is, how do you take all of this theory and you extract all of these principles and you apply them in real life?
The important part.
Apply them to your own products. That's the real question. And we have a 3-step process that we personally use for premium brands, like premium brands that want to portray themselves as premium, or brands that aspire to be premium brands and that need help to really just craft their strategy and their positioning. We have a 3-step process. It's very, very simple. So the first thing, the foundational step, is research and psychology mapping. It's what I call psychology mapping because essentially what you want to create is you want to create a clear picture of the psychological breakdown or the psychological profile of who your customer is. And you want to understand what are their triggers when it comes to recognizing exclusivity. I might go to someone and they might see a watch, a luxury watch, like for example, a Patek Philippe with some crazy complications that, you know, a watchmaker spent thousands of hours making. However, they might care about something else. And so we need to understand, what does exclusive mean to the customers? So we create an aspirational identity for every single customer segment. We understand that, you know, we've got people that are not aware
Psychology
of
mapping,
that's
interesting.
going on. When it comes to the product, we've got people that are very aware of your product. They're very aware of how it
I
compares
like
to
how he's
competitors.
like
And
giving
so
us
we need to understand what
transferable
your customers value.
steps.
That's the first step. The main challenge then is to identify kind of the mood of your social ads, because ads by essence have to be a little bit more aggressive than your organic content or your typical publication that just isn't conversion driven. It needs to be conversion driven, okay? And so what that means is you're going to be selling at some point, or you're going to weave some selling psychology in it to encourage a certain decision. Now, when we do that, we cannot waver from the direction that you set out with your business. Like, for example, if Lululemon just starts blasting, 40% off, 50% off, 60% off, like all these crazy discount offers, every single month, that will tarnish their brand. In the long term, it's not good. Short term, they might make a few sales, sure, but in the long term, it'll hurt their brand identity.
Of course.
So we need to make sure that we identify the marketing vector that is going to be consistent throughout every single ad that we launch. And so once we do that, once we have that marketing vector, we need to see and set a spectrum of ad variants that we're going to use so that we have the latitude of testing as many ads as possible. But we also want to understand that not every single format or not every single concept of an ad is going to resonate with customers. And so we need to create this matrix, if you will. I call it a spectrum, just essentially saying no to certain things because it's not on brand per se, and identifying where we can have the latitude in testing. And so we need to create a balance between the marketing vector that we set out and the creative testing framework. And that's a logistical problem, essentially. The other thing is optimizing for performance. So essentially, when you start launching campaigns, what you need to understand is you're not just going to look at purchases, okay? You're going to look at fundamental metrics that tell you how your story is doing. Your hook rate, your video hold rate, click-through rate, obviously. There's also your retention. If you do cohort analysis and you want to see exactly if people are coming back, especially if you're in fashion and you've got people coming back, that's a great sign that you're really weaving that storytelling and that identity and people are just resonating with your brand. That's a good signal. And so when you're optimizing for performance, you don't always want to be ROAS, or purchases. Yes, that's very important, obviously, but you also want to take into account the bigger picture. You want to understand, okay, how is your brand scaling? Not just your revenue, how is your brand actually scaling, your brand equity? Are you converting new people into the ecosystem, right? That's the question you need to ask yourself. We did it very well. We've been helping a brand called Slate Swim, which is a premium swimwear brand based in LA. And we've been helping them for the past 4 years. And it's essentially this evolution. How can we know our customers better than they know themselves so we can show them a story that attracts
Interesting.
them? How can we then set a marketing vector that is consistent, but doesn't really constrain us in how much we can test, and which formats and which ads and data points are we going to take a look at to evaluate performance? And so for this brand, for example, we took them from literally 0 to 7 figures in sales and taking them to multiple 7 figures in the next few months. So that's the process of really understanding how to position your brand into a premium player in your industry and just carve a category of one. If you want me and my team to implement this process for you, you can book a call by going into the first link in the description. You'll be speaking with me and we'll see if this process is a good fit for you. Because at the end of the day, premium ads are about creating a feeling in your customer. It's not about getting the sale, it's really about getting the sale, but also doing it in a way that creates a feeling that makes them come back. If you take anything from this video, let it be this. Exclusivity makes people want your product. Identity makes them see themselves in it. And storytelling makes them remember you. And so when you combine all of these timeless principles, your brand is essentially going to be attracting customers at will that it can service. And so I want you to ask yourself this question right now. What world am I creating for my customers, and why would they even care to be a part of it? Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you on.
Okay. Let me comment on what he said now. Every single thing he said is true. Because whenever I'm teaching or whenever I'm designing or whatever doing related to this field, we kind of focus on these three things: exclusivity of how do you create exclusivity and how you're able to communicate to the customers, right? And then storytelling. That's why I, even in the fashion shows, I don't like the conventional idea of just doing the shows itself. I like a little bit of story in it, what's the element coming through it, right? And then the last part of identity. That is most important. Like anything you make, you need to have an identity of the product and how do people associate to it, right? Yeah, I mean, he kind of like mentioned the things that we already know. It's more about, again, applying these skills. It takes a lot of time and effort and patience, but hey, it's worth it at the end. Let me know what you guys think about it, and I give it a thumbs up. It's a nice video.